Hey everyone, my name is Nikolai Pavlov and I'm going to show you some Power BI tips and tricks. Today I will talk about merge queries function in Power Query. There are two options to combine queries, the append and merge functions in Power Query. In my last video we looked at appending queries, which in plain English is essentially stacking two tables on top of each other. Ideally, the tables that you're appending should have the same structure, which is the same number of columns. It's not always possible to append queries, or you may not need it. In this case, you can merge them using a matching column. An output of merge will be a single wider query. Let's take a closer look at the merge queries function. Merge is often compared to Excel VLOOKUP, and some people are asking, why bother using it at all if it gives the same result? Well, Power Query's merge is a lot more powerful and has better functionality than the good old Excel VLOOKUP. Let's see some of the reasons why I would prefer using the merge function in Power Query than Excel. The first reason, in my opinion, is probably one of the most important ones, is that Power Query can work directly with external data sources. What that means is when you're working with large amounts of data stored in databases, CSV, and web queries, you can bypass Excel and jump straight into Power BI. This goes back into Excel's inability to deal with a large number of rows. So save your time, save your nerves, and just use Power Query. Second, Power Query's merge can look up based on multiple conditions. This is something that VLOOKUP cannot do. When there are two tables with two matching columns, but you need a third column from the second table in your first table, the merge function in Power Query would work best. Third, comparing values from two tables. When there's a need to compare lists from two tables, where some values are in both tables while others are not. For example, when you have one list of students who attended one class, and then the second list of students who attended another class, and your task is to find out who went to both classes. A simple merge using only the matching rows from the two tables will get the job done quickly. And lastly, the merge function can return multiple columns with one query, which means no more multiple VLOOKUPs when you need to bring in more columns. Again, saves you computing power. Alright, to understand better what merge is, let's jump into Excel and see a couple of examples. For this particular example, I will be using Power Query in Excel instead of Power BI, but it doesn't really matter because Power Query is the same tool both in Excel and in Power BI. My two tables are product table, where I have ID of every product, and a simple sales table with 5 days and some sales and revenue and quantity. First thing I want to do is to import these two tables into Power Query. To do that, I click anywhere on the table, go to Data, and then click From Table Range. I'm importing this table into Power Query. Once I am in Power Query, I will first rename the table, call it Product, and close and load 2. For this example, I'm only going to create connection for now. So I pick the last one and then I click OK. As you can see, the first query is in the Power Query. So I'm going to bring the second table into the Power Query now. I rename the table Sales and load it. Close and load 2. Same thing, only create connection. Once I have both queries loaded into my Power Query as connections, I can start merging. I would like to merge product table onto my sales table so I can see the name of sold products. For this, I will click on sales table because I will be merging to the sales table and click merge. Once there's a merge window, I will choose my second table, product, identify matching columns, In my case, it's product ID and ID. I click OK. This takes me back to Power Query. And once I'm in Power Query, I click the expand button and will bring only the name of products. And I will unclick this because I do not want to use original column names as prefixes, and click OK. As you can see, I merged the two queries. Essentially, I brought the product name from the first query and merged it into the second table. For my second task, I will switch the tables that I'll be merging. This time I'll be merging the second table onto the first table. And my task will be also a little bit different. You'll see that in just a minute. Again, I click anywhere on the table to import the table into the Power Query. My first table is product. Close and load 2. Again, only create connection. And I do same with the second table. And this is the sales table. I name it sales. Close and load 2. Only create connection. Once I have both of my tables here, I can click on any of the queries to get me back to the Power Query editor. So from here, this is my first table and I want to merge the second table to my first table. What I do is I find merge queries here and click merge queries. When I see the merging window, I choose the second table, sales, identify matching rows, columns, and then click OK. When I have the expand button here, click the expand button, and instead of expanding, I would like to aggregate. And I would like to see a sum of revenues and a sum of quantity. And then I click OK. What I have here is when the second query is merged to the first one, instead of expanding it, I did aggregation. And what it did, it summed up all revenues and quantities of the products that I sold. So for example, I sold 13 cell phones and a sum of revenue was $6,500. TV sets, for example, I sold them for $8,000. So this goes to show that the merge function can be also used to group items. If you're familiar with SQL concepts, this is exactly what it is. In my third example, I would like to show you how to look up based on multiple conditions. Here I have two tables. I have a sales table and I have a product table also. I have two columns, car and type. So trucks and sedan in my case, and then sport and family. Here we have the same thing, and price. Let's say I would like to find the price of cars and bring it to the first table. And depending on a car and its type, I would like to find out the price of it. So then I can do calculations and find out revenues. How do I do that? VLOOKUP cannot do that. What I do is I again import these two tables to Power Query. This will be named car sales. Close and load 2. Only create connection for now. And then this little table goes into Power Query as well. I will call it car product. Make sure price is decimal. Okay, close and load 2. When I have these two queries in my Power Query, I can click on one of them. And this time I would like to merge it as a separate query. I click merge and then merge queries as new. Once I'm here, I choose the tables I'm merging, car sales and car product. And here, holding shift, I choose which columns I'm matching. So 1 and 2, and then 1 and 2. And click OK. And now I have a new query, which I will name cars new query. Expand. I'd like to see price. There we go. What Power Query did here is it brought the price column from the second table and matched it depending on car and its type. And now I can do all kind of calculations from here. On a final note, I would like to compare the merge function and building relationships between tables in Power Query. Some experts say that when you're working with large tables, I'm talking about in the 10 million range, maybe more, it's better to create relationships between tables, as merge can create some performance issues with large numbers like that. If you want, you can watch one of my previous videos on how to build relationships between tables. However, when you're working with relatively small tables, you would want to keep your data organized without having to create too many relationships, especially when dealing with tables which have fewer columns. In this case, it's better to flatten the data by merging these two tables, simply for organizational purposes and for better readability. For example, when there's a table with information about address, city, and province, and a second table with city, country, and region, simply merge them together to avoid creating too many relationships in your data model. Another occasion when merge is preferred is when there's a need to group values and do aggregation, which I showed in my second example. To sum up, the merge queries function joins two tables together and provides you with an extra tool to transform your data and make it more organized. Thank you for watching my video, and I'll see you later.